I
Thank
know now that it's Hey Teves, and I want to share with you something about Hey Teves. A Farbregen for Hey Teves. What is Hey Teves? Hey Teves, first of all, is the fifth day of the month of Teves, which is today. Um, and it is a holiday that, can you imagine, in our generation? We just come from Hanukkah, a story that happened in the second century before the Common Era. Now we celebrate with a gusto, but we don't celebrate it in the same way as, you celebrate something that is very personal in the sense that it's something that's living for you. Something that's living for you, you know, a child, you're marrying off a child, right? Yep, exactly, Andrew. Um, you're marrying off a child. So, that's a real celebration for you. Um, you're getting married, right? Real celebration. It's your life in your lifetime, right? Something that happened not in your lifetime is harder to connect. But that's the amazing thing about the Jewish people. Could you imagine things that happened to Jews so many years ago, and we still connect with it, and it was still important to us, and so on. But could you imagine, like you were, in the times of, the 40 years in the desert, or you were with Joshua going into the land of Israel, conquering the land, and you got your settlement, your place of settlement. Imagine you're there with King David and you bought off the property from our Arvana to the threshing floor where Temple Mount is going to be. You were there, you're part of that. First of all, the historical sense of it, of course, is something, but more important, it's the being a part of of Jewish history. Not just in Canada we have something called participation. At least when I was a kid, I don't think they have it anymore. Participate. Don't be just a sideliner and watching the show, watching the game on the side. Be a participant and get out there and do exercise, do sporting activities so you can get some exercise in. So imagine, and we have that in our generation, as in 1987 when there was the court case of the books that were stolen from the Rebbe's library from his own nephew, um, selling them for great profit because he needed money, and went to a non-Jewish court with a non-Jewish judge, Judge Sifton, and he gave the ruling after I think it was about 30 odd days in court. And the ruling came down, Didan Natzach, that the books belong to the Chabad Lubavitch library, to Agudas Chasidei Chabad, and it was a great moment. Personally, I was in Montreal. I was in the Chabad house and got the phone call, and sitting next to another shliach, Rabbi Kessler, took out some mashka. We said a l'chaim, and we started to dance together. And then called my wife. She said, "Go, go to New York." And I went down, got a ticket, went straight to the airport, or got a few things at home, whatever. Went straight to the airport and flew into New York. And the airport, I meet another, I don't know, 100 chassidim from Montreal, all going into New York. What was the big celebration? So one thing that we saw clearly, the Rebbe had a lot of pain through this whole ordeal. He went to the Ohel, the resting place of his father-in-law, throughout the court case, just about every day. And he spoke about it with great pain. And you might think, well, it's a bunch of books. First of all, they're holy books. Some of them are originals. As the Rebbe said, one of them is the Baal Shem Tov Siddur, that the Baal Shem Tov Siddur that the Rebbe himself said he never touched because he was just, the holiness of it was too great, that he felt, original manuscripts, 1,000 years old, 200 years old, from the Rebbeim, from all the Chabad Rebbes. And these are, aside from the teachings, but it went even deeper than these were teachings that were integral, again, many original manuscripts and books that, of course, in the market, in the Jewish market, would have great value. But beyond, and I don't mean material value of money, of course it had that, but the wealth of spirituality there, of teachings. But it was actually even more, and the Rebbe himself expressed it. You know what it really was? It was trying to unseat the Rebbe. And Andrew, before you had your benkel, your chair there, and I made mention of it earlier. And we didn't see you on your chair, but all we saw was the chair. And the Rebbe made mention of this, that it's a milchama of the benkel. It is a battle for the chair of the Chabad throne, shall we say, where they claimed that with the previous Rebbe, that's it, it's all finished. Chabad had finished its chapter and its movement had finished. And that he was the rightful heir of the only grandson of the previous Rebbe, and therefore a rightful heir of at least part of the library. And again, it was about, is there a Rebbe? Is the Chabad movement still under the leadership of the Rebbe? And this was what the underlying theme, shall we say, in the court case. So I heard from my teacher explained as follows. We had a story called Purim. What was Purim? It was a decree in heaven against the body of the Jewish people, that Haman wanted to destroy the physical reality of the Jewish people. Then came the story of Hanukkah. Right? It came a few hundred years later. And what was the story of Hanukkah? It was that the Syrian Greeks wanted to destroy not the body of the Jew, the soul of the Jew, because they want to get rid of Judaism. No more Jewish life. That's what Hanukkah was, a decree against the soul of the Jew. Then came Yutis Kislev, 200 years ago, the Alter Rebbe, and that was a decree in heaven too. What was the decree? The decree was on the light of Chassidus, which means the teachings of Chassidus. On the teachings themselves was a decree. Is the world ready for these teachings, or is the world not ready for these teachings? That was what the decree was. Now came in our generation a decree that was not on the teachings, but on the teacher, on the Rebbe. Is he still Rebbe? Is a Rebbe truly a Rebbe? And or is this something that was of the past and no longer really exists anymore? No longer exists. There's a lot to go into this point, but just briefly, is a Rebbe just a regular person that has, like me and you, we have our public life, we have our private life. We have our life as a leader in the community, and then we have our private life. Or is a Rebbe just a different kind of individual? That everything about him is only there for the people. So interesting, the Rebbe, when he called in the lawyers who were his lawyers in the case, so he said, pay particular attention to one letter that was written by the previous Rebbe to the head librarian of the Jewish Theological Seminary, who had a huge library and was one of the biggest libraries. This is in the 40s during the war. That he wrote a letter to the head librarian there. And what was it? It was in order to save the books from the previous Rebbe from war-torn Europe that was left behind. And in that letter, he writes that the books belong to Agudas Chasidei Chabad, to the Chabad movement, and therefore do whatever you can in order to retrieve those books because they have great value to the movement and to the Jewish people. Again, original manuscripts. We're talking about manuscripts that are 1,000 years old. We're talking manuscripts that were, a couple hundred years from all the Chabad Rebbes, and and so on. Like an original Rashi manuscript, from many years ago, with Rambam and so on. And the Rebbe paid particular attention because look what this letter is saying is that the library belongs to the movement and it's not a personal library. So those who fought against the Rebbe, they said, well, no, the Rebbe wasn't telling the truth. Because if it was a personal library, then in a time of war, one government would not intercede for someone's personal belongings to try to get them, to get them for that individual. And therefore, that's why he said that. But really, they belong to him personally. And since I'm the grandson, the only one, I'm an heir. And Judge Sifton recognized that after he understood what a Rebbe is, a Rebbe cannot lie, even to save his books, even to save his library. If he wrote that this belongs to the movement, then it must belong to the movement. And a non-Jew, this is a non-Jew, understood what a Rebbe is. They wanted to make a Rebbe just, a regular person like me and you, like Andrew, your seat, I have a seat. We sit in a chair. The Rebbe sits in a chair. We all sit in a chair, and we are who we are. And Rebbe, same thing. And the judge understood that a Rebbe is a holy individual, as such that whatever he says is what he truly means. And if he said that this is what it belongs to, then there's no doubt that this is who it belongs to. And that was one of the leading arguments that was used in order to come to the conclusion. Amongst also what the Rebbe's wife, Rebbetzin Chaya Mushka, said when she was asked, so she said, who do the books belong to? And so she said, the books and the Rebbe belong to the Chassidim. To the Chassidim. And that actually, I just heard a story that the niece of Judge Sifton, who lives in Saskatchewan, Canada here, said that statement really gave him a different perspective on things. So, Hey Teves is that the teacher, the Ma'or, the source of light, right? There's the teachings. The Alter Rebbe, it was a decree against the teachings. Here's a decree against the teacher, against the Rebbe. Is a Rebbe just, a regular teacher, like, and can, have his whatever, or is a Rebbe a Rebbe? Or is a Rebbe truly, a Rebbe is truly the neck, right? Just like the Holy Temple is the neck. What's so amazing about the Holy Temple? It's the presence of God that is brought down from on high and is reflected down here in this world, right? What is a Rebbe? It's the presence of God, right, that is truly reflected down here on earth. That's what a Rebbe is. Now, are we that? Absolutely. We've got a holy soul. We've got a godly soul. The difference is our godly soul is kind of in prison. It's in jail. It's not truly revealed. We reveal it sometimes not. We're not a living holy temple. In potential, we are. Not in actual reality in every breathing, living moment. But that's what a Rebbe is. He is that the neck, the holy temple in flesh and blood. And that's an important thing to appreciate. We have the Holy Torah, right? We have the Holy Temple. But all of that is not truly alive. How come? Well, because in the end, it's ink on parchment and it's stones of a building. Is it holy? Absolutely. Whoever has gone to Israel and been in the Western Wall, is it holy? Absolutely. Not denying that. It's not the same kind of holiness as a Rebbe, because he's a person that is in the embodiment of Torah, a living Torah scroll, not ink on parchment. I don't, not to belittle ink on parchment, of course, but in perspective, it's not the same. Why is it not the same? Because ink on parchment, or you go to the Western Wall, we can all shed a tear there. We can all feel whatever we feel. Yeah, but, and we go away, not necessarily any different. Not necessarily any different. Yeah, it was a moving experience. Whoa, I went to the Western Wall. I went to the tunnels. I was stood and right directly where the Western Wall is under the ground over there, against the, wonderful. Did you change? Were you different because of that experience? Sometimes, yes. I don't want to belittle me or you or anybody here or any of us, don't get me wrong. But usually that's not the case. It doesn't change us. The Western Wall, the stone doesn't change you. Torah doesn't change you unless you change yourself. But when a person who's an embodiment of it, that you are inspired by, that's going to inspire greater change from within. That's going to really what's going to make me who I need to be. And that's why, the importance of a Rebbe is because it ultimately is bringing heaven on earth in the sense of just as the Holy Temple does it. So there's the individual who is the embodiment of that and brings it to us in a way that is specific for me in our generation. Because, think about it, the Western Wall hasn't changed. Whether it's 50 years ago, 200 years ago, 500 years ago, it's the same Western Wall. So how is it that if I go there, or any of you that are with me right now, or the thousands of people that go there, how's it speaking to me today different than it did to whatever the needs were and what the challenges were 200 years ago, whoever stood in front of the Western Wall? Well, it doesn't. It speaks to me whatever I want it to say to me, and which itself can be a challenge and a difficulty and a problem. But when you have someone who is a teacher, a mentor, a Rebbe, who is the embodiment of that light of God, and is to project it to us and to the world, and that's what he's there for, is to, as the Rebbe said, the books and the Rebbe belong to the Chassidim, belong to all of us, because he's just there for us, totally. Never given over to us. So to us means to where I am at, because he teaches me, to what the call of the hour is for our generation, and for what my specific needs are in my particular life, in my particular, situation. And therefore, in a sense, hey, Teves then becomes like, whoa, really powerful and all important Yontif. The amazing thing is, in our generation, not distant. Now, even though Gimel Tammuz has happened and the Rebbe is not physically with us, but the Rebbe is today more with us than ever before in spirit. And we rise to the occasion of being more connected, more than ever before. And that, that is happening. 7-day celebration. That's what happened originally. So a judgement to everybody. That's a
Good Yom Tov.
Yom Tov.
Any questions on this, or any comments, any thoughts? There's much more to share.
Rabbi, I'm not sure if I missed the point, but the nephew, did he only want the books, or did he want to have the leadership of the movement?
Oh, no. He was in difficult times, and he wanted the money, and the books were, a great,
Right.
to make a quick buck. No. He wasn't a committed Jew at that time.
Okay.
Yeah.
The Rebbe testified that I think she was asked what he owned, like if he was rich or something. It supposedly only testified that what he owned was a pair of tefillin and a tallis. That's the only thing. Everything else belonged to the movement.
Yeah. Ahuba, you wanted to say something? Or anybody else?
No, I was upping the volume because I couldn't hear what Andrew was saying. Sorry.
So what? Let me see if I got the link over here. I'm going to try to show something to you. You can see a video of me dancing on the benches of.
Awesome.
Give me 1 second. I'm going to try to give me a moment. I just thought of it. I should have thought of it earlier. My apologies. But as they say in French, better late than never. Second. Let's see if we can do this. Maybe we'll get a little treat. You know what's beautiful is my kids and my grandchildren. Since it's video in our times, right? So we they lived. I mean, my kids were very young then, so just a few of them. Some of them were born then, but they have a video which expresses, the joy and the unbelievable happiness, and that they were, that they can now watch it and be a part of it. It's amazing. So give me a second. Let me see if I can find it here. My son posted. I thought my. Welcome, Rebbe Pesach, a Gejantiv.
Even in general, learning more symbols together. Okay.
So I made
My grandchildren. Well, some other pleasurable things. Shoot. I'm a little not getting it. Why I don't see it here.
You posted it on Facebook, I think.
Oh, yes. My son did, you're right. But I thought he posted it on the family group. Hold on. Give me a moment. One second. Oh, okay, I got it. Okay, here it is. Okay. Okay, thought I had it. Have it on my phone. I gotta find it over here. Oh, okay. Let us share. I'm the backside over here. I want the hand going. A little sweet something. So,
That was
Wow.
great.
so
Amazing.
my
That
kids
was
and
great.
grandchildren, as we mentioned, it's not Hanukkah that happened 2,000 odd years ago. Chas v'shalom to take away from Hanukkah, but to have something in your lifetime that is a celebration, a new holiday, and that you were a part of, and now you could see on video your Zaidi, your father, and so we said a lot of l'chaim. We danced the whole night till my 7 o'clock flight in the morning. Didn't go to sleep the whole night. The place was packed and mobbed with chassidim that came from all over the place to celebrate, because as much as the pain was for the Rebbe that we experienced, that's how much the joy had to be on the other side of things. And it's as we expressed earlier, that that the ultimate joy is that Didan Natzach, that the Rebbe is our Rebbe, and that there's the idea of the Rebbe is something that even the non-Jewish judge appreciated and understood, which is also brings up the idea that we spoke in the Sikha of the idea of the neck, of bringing down to earth, right? That the concept of a Jewish leader, of a Rebbe, a holy individual, that's a lofty thing. We have no idea what a Rebbe is. There was a good Jew that came to the original Rebbe, was the grandson of the Baal Shem Tov. He said, Rebbe, I just learned that the Talmud says it's 36 hidden tzaddikim, righteous people. Well, obviously you're not one of them, because everybody knows you're righteous. So the original Rebbe said, Oi, Eichen ve'ayf mir. Woe upon me if that my righteousness is what you see of me. What we see of the righteous people, remember, is only from our bubble of who we are. So what do we see of them? Such a limited perspective. Eons beyond. Eons, and we have no inkling. That's how great. Remember, we learn in Tanya that a righteous person has complete mastery over their every emotion. Subliminal emotions, not just emotions that are expressed. But the ones that are deep rooted in the complete righteous person, completely bound and united with God on the emotional and intellectual level, we can't imagine what that is. We have trouble with our behavior to be aligned with God, let alone the inner workings of our heart and mind. Not thoughts. I'm talking about the mind itself. And that's an external aspect of a Rebbe, by the way. That's a righteous person. A Rebbe is eons beyond the righteous. Just like, because righteous are many, 36 righteous, but a Rebbe, head of the Jewish people, there's one. That's already, beyond. So that person really is like the head. It's way beyond. But as we learned over here, his whole function is like the temple, the Beis Hamikdash, is to bring that holiness down to here. The function of the Rebbe is to bring it to us. So you can imagine a court case that it's not being presided by rabbis, right? With at least what Torah perspective is of a righteous person and a Rebbe, they have some kind of, a non-Jew. And the non-Jew appreciates and understands. In other words, it was brought down to earth, this idea of a Rebbe, right? That a Rebbe is an integral part of Judaism, an integral part that is something that needs to be continued. Just like we said, Yutis Kislev was a decree against the teachings. It needed to continue after the Alter Rebbe left prison. So likewise, the idea of Hey Teves is the idea of Rebbe, of the source of light, right? There's the light, the teachings, and the source of light, the Rebbe, the teacher, the mentor, the Rebbe. That is something that is integral and must be continued. And that's so important now because we have a Gimel Tammuz where the physical reality of the Rebbe is not with us. So we need to have that concept, very, what's the word I'm thinking of, emphasized. It's not de-emphasized. It needs to be emphasized because it's now as important and even more important than ever before. And with that, you know what? I should have a l'chaim here and say l'chaim. The Pesach, zog l'chaim. We have to say l'chaim. No, I'm getting a l'chaim. Wait, Pesach, share something with us.
Good Yontif. An amazing thing came out of the court case from Didan Natzach. In secular law, there's two different kinds of.
Anna, can I interrupt just for a moment? Do you have a l'chaim? Could you get a l'chaim? Andrew, you have a l'chaim? You're not working? You could say l'chaim, right? Jason, you have a l'chaim? Take a l'chaim. Jason, you have a l'chaim? To get a l'chaim.
I sent him a message.
Larry?
I got a glass.
You have a l'chaim, Larry?
Can I get one?
And David, a l'chaim. And ladies, if you have some l'chaim also. Yeah.
Not on me.
Not on you. I didn't expect a bottle to be on you. I expect the bottle to be in the house, though.
So somewhere
Bottle on you would not be a good sign.
Smirnoff.
So, okay, pour some. And let's say l'chaim. We make a bracha together. I have a shahakol. If you have wine, then make on wine. And if you have, let's say, a shahakol together. And by the way, if you only have water, you can make l'chaim on water too. All right, ladies, you can make on l'chaim. Let's make it all together. Baruch atah Eloheinu melech ha'olam shehakol niyah b'baro. L'chaim, everybody.
Chaim.
Oh,
Chaim l'vracha.
Chaim.
Go ahead, Reb Pesach.
that hit the chest.
I was just saying that in secular law, there's two kinds of ownership. There's the ownership of property that an individual could have, and there's the ownership also of a corporation. There's both kinds of ideas, and those are the two levels of ownership. So a corporation is like an individual in terms of ownership of property. That has a corporation has full property rights, just like a person does. That's why there's a value in secular law for a person who does business to have a corporation, because if the corporation goes bankrupt, the person who owns the corporation does not. The corporation has its own responsibilities and has its own rights and obligations, and just like an individual. So it's like an individual in terms of property.
Right.
Now, there's no other kind of idea. There's only the individual and the corporation. This posed the problem over here, where Berke, the one who took the books from the Rebbe's library, he claimed that the books belonged to the previous Rebbe. And as such, being that he was the heir of the previous Rebbe, he had every right then to abscond with the books, because factually, according to the case that he made, they belonged to him. This presented a problem in law, a definite problem in law, because if in fact it's owned by an individual, and the books were owned by an individual, the individual being the previous Rebbe, then it would be correct that the one who was his inheritor, the one who was his heir, his property would then automatically be inherited by his heir or his heirs. In his case, he was the only one of that generation, grandson of the previous Rebbe. So in order to resolve this situation, the court needed to understand an entire new category, a category that did not exist earlier, that there is an individual, and yet what he owns belongs to a community. So he's not a corporation because he's an individual. And didn't belong to a corporation, belonged to the individual. So this is the idea of the Rebbe, that's an idea that he's an Adam Klali. He's a general soul. And in him is contained and connected all of the souls of all of Israel, all the Jewish souls. And this was recognized in the court by Judge Sifton. And so actually established a precedent of a new category that says that there is a person that he himself belongs to the community, and therefore his possessions do not belong to his heirs, but belong to the community. This did not exist in secular law at all. And this was very,
because it can't, you know why it does? Because it can only exist by the Jewish people, the concept. And therefore it did not exist in secular law.
Because there's an idea in Adam Klali, he's an Adam Klali, right, that like the Rebbetzin, like the Rebbe's wife said that her father belonged to the community. The books belong to the community because her father, the previous Rebbe, belongs to the community, and therefore his possessions belong to the community. And in secular law, there's no such distinction, because it's not a corporation. If it's an individual, then it belongs to the heirs of that individual. And the idea is, even though he's an individual, his property is not private, because he himself is not private. He himself is a soul that contains within him all of the souls of Israel, and his possessions then belong, like his Torah, belongs to all of the Jews. And so this was something very unique that came out of this case. And on this was the fulcrum on which the entire case was decided. And they recognized this idea that there's a person, being the previous Rebbe, who's an Adam Klali. He's a general soul. He's not just an individual soul, he's a general soul. And as such, even his possessions are owned in general, not in particular. It was a very, very interesting precedent.
Yeah, thank you. And that deserves a l'chaim. L'chaim, l'chaim, v'racha. A good yontiv, everybody. So just in conclusion of our Farbregen learning, and now Farbregen is the way to celebrate this is, of course, by learning Torah, but also by buying Sfarim, buying holy books. So if you didn't get an opportunity, go online now to either kahot.org, KEHOT, Chabad.org, or you can go to Chabad.org. Maybe there's you can get from them also holy books, and you can purchase at this hour. But it's a time to buy, to enlarge our Jewish library and to increase in the learning of the things that we have in our library of Jewish content, of Torah content. So Chaim, John, to everybody, thank you for all joining the class and the Farbregen. And we should go from this Farbregen to the ultimate Farbregen, that the Rebbe will lead us out of this exile, the Geula Shleim of the ultimate redemption, and in the Beis Hamikdash Ashlishi, because we spoke today about the Holy Temple, and we're waiting for the third and finally a Holy Temple, that finally the presence of God will be brought down into this world in such a clear way that all of the negativity and the evil of the world will be eradicated, and there will be only but good, and will be engaged all the time in the presence of God's goodness and holiness, and will be constantly growing and learning, and only light, and not have to deal with any more darkness. L'chaim. Thank you, John.
L'chaim.
Thank you so much for joining.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you,
Thank
folks.
you.
A good Tanakh and a good Yom Tov. And a Mazel Tov to Jason again.
Yes, Mazel
Mazel
Tov.
Tov, Jason.
Mazel tov, Jason. Mazel
Mazel
tov.
Wonderful.
Beautiful.
Mashiach now.
Amen.
Hey.
All the best.
Way to go,
Thank you,
Jason.
everyone. Thank you, everyone.